Hi guys, welcome to all of my friends who are joining the replay, and welcome to everybody who's entering the private broadcast now. This is the beginning of the first private broadcast just for the people who expressed interest in the Torah class. I'm hoping that there's not going to be any trolls in this room because we've hand-selected the people who are here. I invited about 178 people to this class. And I see right now there's about 35 here, which is very nice. Hello to everybody. Hi Divar, hi Amanda, hi everybody. I thought this is private. It is, LEG. It should be private. Let me see. It should be private as far as I can tell. I set it up to be private and I invited certain people, okay? So, I'm just giving 1 minute for everybody to enter the broadcast, and then we're going to start. Diane, I'll try to remember. I'm so bad with names. I have 8 kids, sometimes I forget their names. Like you thought me and you, LEG. Trolls will just interrupt. That's why we have a private broadcast here, because in a private broadcast it's much easier to control the trolls, because anyone who's a troll, I just unfollow them, and it's done. And hopefully it will stay to a very small minimum. I doubt that any of the trolls would bother to be invited to this broadcast. So it should be good. Thank you, LEG. My wife is indeed awesome. She's a wonderful woman. She's a wonderful wife. She's a mother of 8 beautiful children. I think it's private. My husband wasn't asked for a phone. He can't see it. Okay. What Tanakh you said English can use. Hey, thanks. This is awesome. It's awesome. Thank you. Jay Bird is here. Jay Bird is one of the reasons, you see this guy, Jay Forsyth, with the bird on his thing, is really one of the reasons why I ended up doing this broadcast, because he asked me if I could do a private broadcast without trolls, okay? Because he gets very frustrated when all of the zombie troll types come in and start talking Palestine, etc., etc. So we can all thank him for pushing me to do this. So here's what we're going to do. I have to first explain to you like this. And first of all, how is this going to work? Because in Periscope, there's always comments flying. And it's very hard for me to teach and also address all of the comments. So you guys should just know that if I'm in the middle of a train of thought and you put a comment, I'm probably going to miss it. Okay? I'm probably going to miss it. So, in general, I'll stop in between thoughts for questions and for comments, and I'll try to address them. I think that's the best way to do the class. If you guys want to chat among yourselves in between, that's fine. I'll probably ignore it. If I happen to pick some of it up, I might join in. But please don't take it personally if I'm not able to address each and every comment as it comes. So, I think that's the best way to work. Now, what we're going to be doing today for the next, 45 minutes or so, we'll see how well it goes, is some background about the learning of the Torah and about why we need to learn the Torah and the nature of the Torah, what is the Torah, and what are we trying to gain from learning the Torah. Now, this class is very unique. This is the first time that I've ever done a class like this where most likely the majority of the people in the room are not Jewish. I've taught the Torah many times to Jewish people of all levels of education, people who have a background, people who don't have a background. I've taught different classes in different points in my life, but I've had non-Jewish people join some of my classes, but I don't think I've ever taught a Torah class where the majority of people are not Jewish. In fact, it seems pretty clear to me that the majority of the people in this room are probably even Christian, okay? And so the Christian people in the room probably have studied the Bible before, okay? Probably you've studied the Bible. You might even know it very, very well, but you've studied it from a Christian point of view, not from the original Jewish point of view, which is the way that it was originally intended to be understood when it was written 3,300 years ago. So it's going to be a challenge here to teach people who have studied the Torah in a English translation that doesn't always exactly match up with the original spirit of the words, and to kind of do a re-education. I'm not saying everyone will accept everything that I say. I'm not claiming that at the end of this class any Christian people will necessarily change their religion. That's not my goal. But I hope that people will be able to keep an open mind and kind of clear the slate in their mind of how they understand Torah, and try to see how there might be a completely different way to understand it, which is the way that the Jewish people have understood it since it was given 3,300 years ago. And you might find that that changes what you think. You might find that it enriches what you think. And you might find that you disagree. And all of those are okay. The important thing is that people are learning to see a different viewpoint and the Torah from what they know. Others here, I know, have never studied the Torah at all. And for them, this is going to be completely new. Okay? So that is the first prelude to this class. The second prelude to the class is what is the Torah. Now the word Torah is a flexible word. It's a word that stretches to fit different situations. For example, the most narrow definition of the Torah, the most narrow definition is the 5 books of Moses. What you call in English Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. That's the most narrow definition of the word Torah. But when Jews say the word Torah, they mean more than that. They mean also all of the books of the Tanakh. Okay? Yeah, I know I can hide the chat. Don't worry about it. I like to look at the chat when it's comfortable for me. And when not, I'll ignore it. Don't worry about it, okay? You guys can feel free to chat amongst yourselves, and it's not going to disturb me. I'll look at the chat when I'm when I'm in the place to comment. So the first 5 books of the Torah most narrowly is called the Torah. But Jews use the word Torah also to refer to the entire body of teaching that's connected to the Torah. In other words, like the rabbis tell us in the Talmud, they say, even when a student of Torah, a serious student of Torah, delves deep into the Torah and understands a new novel insight in the Torah that was never revealed before, based on deducing it from the verses, that is also part of the Torah that was given by God at Mount Sinai. So Torah in the broadest sense means the entire body of literature. Like if you look behind me, all the books that are behind me, these books are all Torah from the Jewish way of looking at it. All of the books behind me are Torah. We have here books like this, which are just the 5 books of Moses. This is Torah. We have the Tanakh. Tanakh is an acronym for Torah, Nevi'im, Ktuvim. The 5 books of Moses, the Nevi'im, the prophets, and the Ktuvim, the writings like Song of Songs, Esther, etc., which are not from the prophets, but they're from the writings, Psalms. Okay, those are all writings. And those 3 things, Torah, Nevi'im, Ktuvim, Tanakh, makes up the Hebrew Bible, the 24 books of the Hebrew Bible, which is basically what Christians call the Old Testament. But in a broader sense, the Talmud and all of the oral traditions are also called part of the Torah. And the Code of Jewish Law, which codifies the conclusions of the rabbis in the Talmud in regards to how Jewish people have to behave, it's also Torah. And also the mystical teachings of the Torah, which we call Kabbalah, are also Torah. All of it is considered part of the Torah. But in the most narrow sense, Torah means the 5 books of Moses, which is what we're going to be studying in this class. We're not going to probably conclude all of the 5 books of Moses. It will take several years if we do this 1 or 2 classes per week of approximately an hour long. It would take us several years to complete all of the 5 books of Moses at the rate that we're going to be going. But we'll get started and we'll see how it goes. Let's see the questions. The Jewish guys I know are the best stuff themselves. I love how God used Moses. Are you a rabbi? Kabbalah is part of Torah. Wow. Am I a rabbi? I studied in rabbinical school and I completed my rabbinical ordination, but I'm not employed as a rabbi. I work as a tour guide and as a scribe. I write Torah scrolls for a living, and I guide tours based on the Bible and the Jewish history in Israel. So that's what I do for a living. I don't work as a rabbi. Both the written and oral were given at Sinai. Yes, we're going to get into that now. Okay? So before we open the Torah, the book itself, I want to read to you some things from my notes. I have notes here actually. You see this notebook is old and it's torn. These notes are actually notes that I wrote for a Torah class that I taught in Santa Monica, California, about 13 years ago. I taught a class on Torah in Santa Monica, and a lot of very important people came to that class actually. One of the people who came to the class was the son of the man who invented the IQ test. Another man was a superior court judge in the state of California. So I put a lot of work into these notes that they should be understandable. So I'm very glad that I still have them because it makes my preparation easier for such a class. Someone asked how many books are in the Torah. I said 24 books. Yes, the Christians divided up some of the books into 2 or 3 that we count as one. Like, for example, what you call Ezra and Nehemiah and all of that, they broke up into multiple books, and there's different places where the division is different. So the Jewish Old Testament, even though it's all the same text as what the Jewish Tanakh, even though it's all the same text as what the Christians call the Old Testament, the number of books doesn't come out the same, just because it's divided up differently. Also, the Christians are the ones who added the chapter and verse numbers. We Jews don't have chapter and verse numbers. We have what are called parashot. So, for example, if you look in the original text, you'll see that there are breaks in the text, like this, and wherever there's a break in the text, that's called a parasha or a section in the Tanakh. And they're not necessarily the same as the chapter divisions or the verse divisions that Christians use. Just as a convention to make it easy to refer to chapter and verse in the way that the majority of the world is used to, so the Jewish Tanakhs do have the chapter and verse. Oh, guys, that's my daughter Gula. My wife Miko had to go to visit a friend in the hospital who just had a baby. So I may have to step out to go deal with the baby at some time because I'm the only one dealing with her. Unless one of my older kids takes care of it. Okay, guys. So now, we do have the chapter and verse in our Bible, but we don't consider it to have any significance. We just use it as a reference point when necessary. It's a Christian thing made by Christian monks in the Middle Ages. Before that, it didn't exist. Do you sell mezuzahs? Yes, I have a website called mezuzahstore.com, and you can see my mezuzahs that I sell there, mezuzahstore.com. So now, regarding the learning of the Torah, I think you can watch the replay. Anyone who was invited to this, I think you can watch the replay. Okay, first of all, anyone who has questions about Christianity, like do I believe in Christ or anything like that, it's not for this class. I answer those questions all the time on my regular scopes, and I'll be happy to answer them then, but it's not for this class. This class is to study the Torah the way that it originally was meant to be understood, which is the Jewish way. Okay? It's the Jewish way, is the original way. It's if you're Christian and you believe in Jesus, then the way Jesus understood the Torah is the way I'm going to teach it to you, I believe. Okay? And then whatever was added onto it later, that's up to you to decide whether you believe it or not. I don't believe it, but it's up to you to decide whether you believe it or not. Okay. So now, what is the Torah? The Torah, the word Torah means teaching. The word Torah means teaching. It comes from the Hebrew word hora'ah, which means teaching. Some words that are related to the word Torah are the word horeh. Horeh means a parent. And the job of a parent is to educate and raise the children. Another word that's related to the word Torah in Hebrew is the word moreh, which moreh means teacher. A teacher in Hebrew is a moreh. Or if she's a female teacher, she's morah. And so the word Torah is etymologically related to the words for parent and teacher. The Torah is a teaching. It's not a history book. It's not a book to be used to tell the future or anything like that. It's a book that teaches us how to live our lives. Primarily, it's a book that teaches the Jewish people how to live their lives. But there are also messages in the Torah. If this was a Quran class, I wouldn't be. There are also messages in the Torah which are for all of the children of Adam, for all of the children of Noah, for all of humanity. And in this class, I'm going to try to point those out especially, more than the other lessons, because I know that there's a large amount of the people in this class who are not Jewish. So I'm going to try as much as possible to give the universal lessons of the Torah as well. The rabbis in the Talmud tell us that the Torah is the blueprint of the world. That before God created the world, He wrote the Torah. Okay? That sounds kind of counterintuitive, because in the Torah it says, in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth, and then only after you finish the book of Genesis and you get to the book of Exodus, you have God giving the Torah to Moses on Mount Sinai, starting with the Ten Commandments. But the rabbis tell us that no, God already composed the Torah before He created the world. And then He created the world based upon the Torah. The Torah is the blueprint, and the world is created to fit the Torah. And therefore, anything in the Torah that might seem difficult, or it might seem like something that hi Leonard, Aleichem Shalom, anything in the Torah that might seem that it's beyond our ability to keep, the answer is, it's not possible. There's nothing in the Torah that's beyond our ability to keep, because the Torah was created first, and the world was created second. The Torah is the blueprint of the world. In fact, according to the Kabbalist, and I will mix some very basic Kabbalistic ideas into this class as well, even though you're not allowed to teach all Kabbalistic ideas in public, but there are some basic universal concepts in the Kabbalah that everyone should know. And one of the Kabbalistic concepts is that the letters, the Hebrew letters of the Torah, that string of 300 and something thousand letters, is actually a DNA kind of code of all of the universe. In the letters of the Torah are encoded all of the atoms, all of the planets, all of the animals, all of the DNA of all of the creations that exist in the world. They're encoded in the letters of the Torah. So that there's a little more than 300,000 letters in the Hebrew Torah and the 5 books of Moses. And they are actually the blueprint, the DNA of all of the universe, not just this planet Earth, but all of the cosmos and the universe, the protons, the neutrons, the electrons, the particles, the atoms, etc., they're all encoded in the Torah. And therefore, it's not possible that there's something in the Torah that we can't keep. For example, in the book of Deuteronomy, God says to Moses, you might say that the Torah is difficult to keep, but I am telling you, Lo me'ever hayam hi, it's not on the other side of the sea. Lemor mi yikachenu, who will take us to the other side of the sea and bring it for us, and so we can do it. It's not in the heavens to say who will bring us up to the heavens and bring it to us that we could do it. Rather, it's very close to you in your mouth and in your heart to do it. The reason that it's close to you in your mouth and in your heart is because we were created with the Torah as part of our DNA. So it's not something that's impossible to keep. The Torah is something that could be kept. Now, the rabbis also tell us in the Talmud, what are the books? Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. The first 5 books of what Christians call the Old Testament. The rabbis also tell us in the Talmud, another prelude to learning the Torah. They say that when God created the world, He made a condition with the creation. He made a condition with the creation. The condition was, He said, world, the Pentateuch, however you say that, I can't pronounce that word. The Pentateuch is the Torah. God made a condition with the world. He said, world, heavens, earth, sea, I'm creating you on condition. The condition is that when the time comes and I reveal myself on Mount Sinai to the people of Israel, if they will accept the Torah and they'll say, Naaseh v'nishma, we will do it and we will hear it, which is what the Jewish people said at Mount Sinai. If they accept it upon themselves, then you will continue to exist. But if it will come that day on Mount Sinai, when I need to reveal the Torah to the world, and the people of Israel refuse to accept it, they say, we're not interested, then I'm going to return all of the creation retroactively to Tohu, Vavohu, V'choshech, which in the beginning it says, in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth was Tohu, Vavohu, V'choshech, which means emptiness and void and darkness. So God basically made a condition with the world that if the people of Israel will accept the Torah on Mount Sinai, then the world will exist, and if not, He will revert the world back to nothingness, as if it never happened. In other words, God was saying to the world, I don't need the creation of the world if the world isn't going to accept the Torah. And the intermediary or the vehicle through which all of the world is able to receive the Torah is through the people of Israel, through the Jewish people. Because the Jewish people were chosen by God. What does it mean? You hear all the time that Jews are the chosen people. And some people think that that's like a statement of privilege about the Jewish people. It does not mean that we have any particular privileges necessarily. What it means is that we have an extra responsibility. The people of Israel being a chosen people means that God chose us as the vehicle to be a nation of priests and a holy people, a light unto the nations, to receive the Torah and to teach it to all of the world. Even though the Torah, not everything in the Torah is obligatory upon all of humanity. Much of the things in the Torah are only obligatory upon the people of Israel. But it's the job of the people of Israel to keep all of the commandments of the Torah scrupulously, thereby showing an example of what a nation of priests and a holy people can be. And that should be an inspiration and a light to all of the other nations of the world who aren't required by God necessarily to keep every one of the commandments in the Torah. They're only required to keep the 7 basic universal laws that you've all heard me mention before in my previous scopes. So what that basically means is, what we learn from this is that when people keep the Torah, when the Jewish people, when the Jewish people keep the commandments of the Torah, as well as non-Jewish people keep the 7 universal laws, then the world is in order. The world is stable. The DNA of the world is stable, and the world is stable. When the people of Israel, the Jewish people, and also non-Jewish people in the world don't keep what they're required to keep in the Torah, the world is basically shaking. It's not stable. Because the foundation of all of the creation of the universe is the Torah. The Torah is the foundation of all of the creation of the universe. And so, when people aren't keeping it, it's not that the world is here and the Torah is an added layer on top of it, but rather the Torah is the foundation of all of the universe, of all of the creation. When people are not holding to the Torah, the world shakes in a metaphorical sense, and things start to fall apart at the seams. And so when we see all kinds of disasters and bad things and terrorism, etc., going on in the world, we need to know, first of all, those of us who are Jewish, we have an extra responsibility, but the whole world has a responsibility to commit themselves to keeping God's word. And when we commit ourselves to keeping God's word, this strengthens the world and makes it healthy. Moabite. The Noahide Laws. Yes, the 7 laws are sometimes called the 7 laws of Noah or the 7 Noahide Laws, but that's just like a historical term. But the term that I like to use, which is the truly correct term, is the 7 universal laws. There are 7 laws that God commanded starting to Adam, and then he reiterated them to Noah. And then at Mount Sinai, when he revealed the Torah to Moses, he also taught Moses that he needs to teach these 7 laws to all of humanity. The 7 laws are, do not believe in any idols, only believe in the one God. Do not blaspheme or curse God. Don't murder. Don't steal. Don't torture animals. Don't commit prohibited sexual acts, which for all of mankind that includes male homosexuality, adultery, and most kinds of incest. And the last and 7th law is that every city, county, state, country needs to establish courts of law to uphold all of those other laws and to institute whatever other additional laws are necessary to govern society in a good and healthy way. But all of those laws that they implement should be in the spirit of the other 6 laws, which are the universal laws. So those are the 7 universal laws. Again, don't believe in idols, don't blaspheme God, don't murder, don't steal, don't commit adultery or homosexuality or other sexual offenses, don't torture animals, or more exactly, not to consume a limb removed from a living animal, and establish courts of law. That is the only thing that God demands of all of humanity. The actual Torah has 613 commandments. I don't know how many of you have heard of that, but the Torah contains 613 commandments. People have heard about the 10 commandments, probably. Something just fell in another room. People have heard of the 10 commandments, right? But the 10 commandments aren't anything special. That's a Christian concept. We Jews don't talk about the 10 commandments. We talk about the 10 statements. Aseret HaDibrot, the 10 statements, because those are the only commandments that God verbalized in front of the people at Mount Sinai, in front of millions of people. They heard it directly from the ears of God. And they were inscribed on stone tablets by Moses. First God did it, then Moses had to do it. Okay? And yes, the pomegranate has 613 seeds, that's true. So they are, let's say, like the 10 which sum up. They're like the cliff notes to the 613. But there are actually 613 commandments in the Torah for the Jewish people. Only for the people of Israel. Are the 10 included in the 7? No. Some of the 10 are not included in the 7. For example, the Shabbat, the Sabbath. A non-Jew is not obligated to keep the Sabbath. Only Jewish people are obligated to keep the Sabbath. As it says in the Torah, V'shamru v'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat, and the people of Israel kept the Sabbath, Lasot et ha-Shabbat, to do the Sabbath, Ledorotam Brit Olam, for all generations as an eternal covenant, Oti leolam, it is a sign forever, Beni uben b'nei Yisrael, between me, in other words, God, and between the people of Israel. The Torah says explicitly that the Sabbath is only a requirement upon the people of Israel. It's not a requirement on the entire world. If people want to take a day of rest, or whatever, and spend time with their family, there's nothing wrong with that. But the actual Sabbath, with all of its observances and all of its requirements, is a special sign between God and the people of Israel. So that's an example of one of the commandments, which is in the 10 commandments, but not in the 7 commandments. Muslims also keep Friday as a holy day. Yes, all different religions have invented all kinds of ideas. Christians keep a Sabbath on Sunday when it's... anyway, I don't want to get into that. It was made for all even before Sinai at creation. No, God rested on the 7th day. That's what it says. It says God rested on the 7th day. And we'll get to that soon when we study the first few chapters of Genesis, but God didn't command anybody else to rest. The first time God commanded any human beings to rest in commemoration of his resting was at Mount Sinai with the giving of the Torah and the Ten Commandments. He commanded the Jewish people to rest in commemoration of his resting. And one version of the Ten Commandments in the book of Exodus, it says Zecher L'Maseh V'Reshit, that it's a commemorance of the creation. And in the other version, it says Zecher L'Yetziat Mitzrayim, that it's to commemorate that God took the Jewish people out of Egypt. So again, if the Sabbath is a commemoration of God taking us out of Egypt, why would people who weren't taken out of Egypt keep the Sabbath? Sunday is not the Sabbath of the Lord. That's true. Okay, so that's what I want to say about the commandments, okay? Now, about the written Torah, let me just see what time it is here. It's getting late. I don't remember what time we started this thing. Okay, about the written Torah and the oral Torah. Actually, before that. How was the Torah revealed? You know, you guys all have, I'm sure, at your house, a Bible. King James Version, New International Version, or many other kinds of versions. And it includes in it the Torah. And it happens all the time that I'm scoping. And I'll quote something from the Bible. And people will say to me, which Bible do you read? Which version do you read? Okay? Which version? And I have to try not to laugh. Sometimes I don't succeed. Because in the non-Jewish world, there's a whole argument among people which version of the Bible is the most correct, which is the most accurate. And the reason I have to hold myself from laughing, it's kind of rude to laugh, I should hold it back, is because we read the original Hebrew, the same exact text, letter for letter, word for word, that God gave on Mount Sinai. That's the one that we read. Not King James and not New International and nothing like that. We read the original Bible. That's how the Jewish people do it. But how did we get this text, and how do we know that this text is the correct text? That's what I want to talk about for the next few minutes. Where did this text come from, and how do we know that it's accurate? So let me explain to you how this was revealed. When God took the Jewish people out of Egypt, and he revealed himself on Mount Sinai to Moses, the first thing that he did is that he revealed the 10 Commandments to all of the Jewish people as one. Now I want you to understand what this means. This isn't a normal thing. There's only one religion on the face of the earth that's not based on a revelation to one person or to 5 or 10 people or 12 people, but it's based on a revelation to an entire nation of people. And that's the Jewish religion, the Torah. The Torah tells us that 3,300 years ago, God descended on Mount Sinai while the entire nation was camped around the mountain, 600,000 men between the age of 20 and 50, as well as children and women. So we're talking about literally millions, 2, 3, 4 million people camped around Mount Sinai. And God revealed himself to the entire nation. Not all of the words of the Torah revealed to everybody, but the 10 Commandments were revealed, so to speak, from God's mouth, even though God doesn't have a mouth because he's not a human being. But metaphorically, the Torah speaks about it coming from the mouth of God, so to speak. In other words, the people heard a voice coming from God himself. I am the Lord your God who has taken you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of bondage. You shall have no other gods before me. They heard these words from God's own voice. And so all of the people fell on their face and they said, Naaseh v'nishma. We will do it and we will listen to it, which is a very strange response. You would think the correct response is, we will listen to it and then we will do it. Because how can you do it if you don't listen? But the Jewish people answered, we will do it and we will listen. In other words, they were saying, whatever it is, we're ready to do it. Because we heard it from the voice of God himself. So even if we don't understand it yet, We're ready to do it. Whatever it is, we're going to do it because we know that God himself spoke to us. This isn't a prophet coming to us. This isn't some holy man who comes and says, yes, I'm the son of God, or I'm a prophet, or whatever, and invents a religion. This is God himself revealing to an entire nation. The rabbis tell us that the maidservant at Mount Sinai and at the splitting of the sea had revelations greater than any revelation that Isaiah had or than Ezekiel had. Greater revelations they had because they got the revelation from God himself, each individual, through no intermediary whatsoever. So now, imagine trying to fabricate such a story. How would you fabricate such a story? Let's say, for example, that the Torah wasn't true. God forbid. Let's say that the Torah was written 1,000 years later in the Second Temple period. Some priest came and they made up this book called the Torah and they presented it to the people and they said, this is God's law, this is the Torah. And the people look in it and they say, okay, let's see, what does it say here? Well, it says here that 1,000 years ago, my great-great-grandfather stood at Mount Sinai and heard the Torah revealed straight from the mouth of God, along with the entire nation. And I never heard anything about that before. I never heard of that. It just says it in this book. So is anyone going to accept that? No one's going to accept that or take it seriously. A book that says that your great-great-grandfather heard something that you never heard about that he heard. No tradition came down. So anyone who would try to fabricate a story of millions of people having a national revelation, it's impossible to fabricate such a story. Okay? It just can't be done to fabricate such a story. And this is how we know that the Torah is true. It's the only one revelation that God revealed himself to all of the people of Israel as one. After that, many prophets came. Isaiah, Jeremiah, Ezekiel, etc., all of the prophets. They came and they added certain details to this revelation. They added clarifications. They added messages for that particular time or that particular place. They added prophecies about what will happen in the future. But if any one of those messages contradicts in the slightest way the revelation that we had at Mount Sinai, it's null and void. We reject it completely. It cannot be true. So for us, the Jewish people, the only thing that we know as an axiom, it's for sure true, beyond a doubt, is the Torah. This Torah is the text exactly that God revealed to Moses. And we have no doubt that every letter and every word of it is exact and it's true and it's the word of God. Now we hold everything up against it. Everything else that someone presents to us, some holy man comes and says, God spoke to me and he told me something. So we say to him, okay, what did he tell you? So if he tells us, for example, that the Shabbat is no longer on Saturday, it's on Sunday, we say, you're a heretic, you're a liar, and you're a false prophet. And if it was the times of the temple when we had the Sanhedrin, we would stone him to death and execute him for heresy. Because if he's telling us anything that goes against that revelation that God gave us at Mount Sinai, we know for a fact that it's false, that he's a false prophet. It cannot possibly be true. Now, every religion except for Judaism is based on a revelation to either an individual, like Islam, which is based on a revelation only to one single person named Muhammad. Okay? Only one. And Christianity is based on a revelation to one individual named Jesus. And to some extent also to some of his disciples, let's say, at Pentecost. But basically not more than a few dozen people at the most had supposedly a revelation. So if anything in that revelation comes and contradicts anything in the Torah, we know it's false. We don't accept it. Which is why we don't accept Christianity and we don't accept Islam. But I'm not going to get into the details of that because as we learn the Torah, you'll see where it contradicts. Now, how do we know that the text that we have is the same text that God gave to Moses? So let me explain to you how the Torah was transmitted by the Jewish people. When God revealed himself to Moses at 3,300 years ago in the Sinai desert, he called him into the tent of meeting, at the beginning of the process. And he told him to prepare a scroll just like the scrolls that the Jewish people have now. Prepare a scroll of parchment, which is made out of animal skin. He told him how long to make it, how many pages, how many columns, how many lines. Prepare a blank scroll. And that's what Moses did. And then, over the course of 40 years in the desert, from time to time, God would call Moses into the tent of meeting, the tabernacle, and the cloud would descend upon the tent at the time when God was revealing himself. And God would dictate to Moses what to write in the Torah. And so all of the Torah is dictated from the mouth of God, so to speak, from the voice of God, down to Moses. And the first Torah scribe, which my job is, I'm a Torah scribe. I'm very proud that the first Torah scribe was my great-great-uncle, Moses. Okay? And the reason I say my great-great-uncle is because my father's mother's father is a Kohen, which means that Aaron, the brother of Moses, is my great-great-great-grandfather. So Moses is like my great-uncle. So I'm very proud to have the same job as my great-uncle Moses, who was the first Torah scribe, who transcribed the Torah, dictated from the voice of God. He transcribed it into the scroll which he prepared. Levites, Moses the uncle, yes. That is the coolest thing ever. It is very cool. When we read about Aaron in the Torah with my children, I say, Aaron, our grandfather. Hasaba Aharon, I tell them. Our grandfather Aaron. And I'm also named Aaron after my great-great-great-great-grandfather. So now, that's how the first Torah scroll was created. The first Torah scroll was dictated from the mouth of God to Moses, letter for letter for letter, word for word, space for space. And it's not just the text that is exact, it's also the spaces in between where the breaks are in the text. Like I showed you, whenever you look at a text of the Hebrew Bible, there are breaks, and the breaks are also exact and very important. Now, from that time, all of the Torah scrolls that were ever written were copied from another Torah scroll. So, for example, people took Moses' Torah scroll and they put it down next to them, and they took another set of parchment and they copied a Torah scroll. And then they compare it word for word, letter for letter to make sure that it's accurate. Now, the Jewish law is that if even one letter is wrong, a single letter, a single vowel is wrong or missing or misspelled, the Torah scroll is invalid and it can't be used, it can't be read from until it's corrected. So therefore, that's how we maintain the integrity of the text of the Torah. The way we maintain the integrity of the text of the Torah is by making sure that we copy the Torah exactly. Now, today, let's say, for example, every Sabbath we read the Torah in the synagogue. Guys, if anyone gets frozen, it usually helps to go out of the broadcast and go back in, and then it will unfreeze for you. That's a little advice for Periscope. So now, the way that we read the Torah in the synagogue is that we take out the scroll, and there's a reader who reads from the Torah. And let's say at some point in the reading, someone notices that there's a mistake, there's a letter missing, or even a letter that's cracked or broken, or any little flaw in the Torah. So we immediately close up the scroll, tie it on the outside with a special tie to show that it's invalid, and we put it aside, and it's not read from again until it's corrected. If one letter is cracked, or one letter is missing, or misshaped, we can't read from it. And because no two letters can touch each other, no letter can be misshaped in any way, no letter can be written in a way that it might be mistaken for another letter. And so because of that, the Jewish people have been able to keep the integrity of the text of the Torah for 3,300 years, going all the way back to Moses. Now I will tell you something. If you take a Torah scroll from Jews in Russia, and a Torah scroll from Jews in England, and a Torah scroll from Jews in America, and a Torah scroll from Jews in Yemen, and I'm not talking about now that we can all communicate on the phone and the computer and the Skype and all of that. I'm talking about if you would have done this 100 years ago, 200 years ago, before modern communications, when Jews in Yemen had no contact with Jews in any other part of the world, and you compare all of the Torah scrolls together, you have the exact same text, letter for letter, word for word, space for space. Even if the spaces are different, the Torah scroll is invalid. So that all of the Jewish people have the exact same text of the Torah. No, every 2 Torah scrolls are identical in text. And if one is found to have any deviation, it immediately has to be put aside and it can't be used until it's repaired and fixed. This is how the Jewish people have been able to maintain the integrity of the text of the Torah. So when we read the original Hebrew Torah, we're not reading someone's translation or someone's interpretation or someone's version of it. There's no room for error. It's exact. It is the Torah. And it's only because we Jewish people have preserved it that way that you, those of you who are not Jewish, have it. Okay? That's how you have it. It's because of the fact that the Jewish people preserved it in this way. I'm skipping over a lot of notes here because the time is getting late and I want to finish up in the next 10-15 minutes. First of all, does anyone have any questions? Let's take a break and take some questions from anyone who might have. That's what's kept us together for thousands of years. That's right. Us Jewish people, it's from the Torah. Amazing how we can learn Torah over Periscope. I really believe that Periscope is a part of the process of the Messianic era. Because in order for the Messiah to come, there has to be in the world the tools prepared that allow all of mankind to connect together and to hear the truth. Because it says that the earth will be full of the knowledge of God as the water covers the sea. That's one of the prophecies about the Messiah. So how can the world be full of the knowledge of God if there's not a way for people to spread it around? And to me, the fact that we can go on Periscope and teach live the true Torah teachings to dozens of people, hundreds of people, and I believe that this will grow to thousands of people at some point, is certainly one of the stages in the process. And I personally feel very honored that, as far as I can tell, this is the first Torah class ever on Periscope, done by an Orthodox Jew. I heard you say that earlier. Thank you. Can you show us the scroll, or is it only seen in the synagogue? I don't have a complete scroll here. I have a scroll that I'm working on writing, and every now and then I scope while I'm writing. And he will come, the Messiah, you'll be surprised when you see him. Yeah. Anyways, you guys will be surprised. Do we know when the Messiah will come exactly? Nobody knows exactly when the Messiah will come. There's 2 times that the Messiah could come. There's a predestined time that God only knows and nobody else knows. That no matter what happens, he will come. Whether we're ready or not, here I come. But at any point in history, there is one Jew descended from King David who's alive in the world, who is fit to be the Messiah, who has the soul of the Messiah in him. And every generation, and if at any point the world is ready, if we repent and we get ourselves in the right order, at any point when we tip the scale to the right side, God will reveal that individual as the Messiah. So we believe that in every generation there is one person who is fit to be the Messiah. And we believe that there's such a person alive right now, even though I have no idea who it is. And we hope that he will come immediately. But there's no doubt that we're coming close to the deadline when it must come no matter what. Because after the reestablishment of the State of Israel, after the gathering of Jews from all the 4 corners of the earth, and so many other prophecies that are coming true, there's no doubt that we're very close to the final rebuilding of the temple and the final time of the coming of the Messiah. Now, I have to go grab a book. Don't leave me. I need to grab another book to show you something. And now you guys get to see that my shirt is untucked. Where is my Tikkun book? I think I took it to my office. I'll be right back. Don't go away, guys. I'm right here. Okay, here we are. Oh, I lost 2 or 3 people. Okay. Now, how does the Torah scroll look? I have here a book of the Torah that has 2 columns. One column is without vowels. This column is exactly how it looks inside the Torah scroll. And one column is with vowels. Now, what does that mean? My wife is teaching a Hebrew class, so you guys are going to learn that the Hebrew language is really only made up of consonants, and then there are vowel marks below the letters and sometimes above the letters that tell us how to connect the consonants together. It's very different than the Latin alphabet that has the vowels and the consonants all in one line. In the Hebrew language, there's only consonants in the original Hebrew. Banana, exactly. And the vowels are marks that are added around the letters to help you to read. Okay? I need the Hebrew class, so follow my wife at Learn Hebrew TV. Learn Hebrew TV. So, for example, this is a book that we use to prepare for reading the Torah in the synagogue. Someone who has to be the public Torah reader, he'll use this book. So what he'll do is this is with the vowels to make sure he's reading it correctly, but this is how he's going to have to read it. This is how he's going to have to read it in the synagogue. Okay? So the Torah that God gave Moses looked like this. It had no vowels in it. Now what does that mean? What does it mean that the Torah had no vowels? And this is a preface to the next concept that I want to speak about, which is the concept of the Oral Torah. Aaron can barely hold it. Yes, it's very big. You see, guys? So anyways, I want to speak to you about the written Torah and the Oral Torah. And here's a place where Christians get confused. Many Christians think that the written Torah was given by God and the Oral Torah was made up by the rabbis. But I'm going to prove to you that if that's the case, you have no Bible and you have no Christianity. There cannot be a Bible and there cannot be Christianity without the Oral Torah. And let me explain to you why. From the time that God gave the Torah to Moses on Mount Sinai 3,300 years ago, until the 6th century, nobody ever put vowels in the Torah. The Torah was written only with consonants. The vowels were invented in the city of Tiberias. Let me clarify. The symbols for the vowels were made up by a school of rabbis in Tiberias in the 6th century. Tiberias, Israel in the 6th century. And they invented a system of symbols to record what is the correct pronunciation of all of the words in the Torah. But before that, the correct pronunciation was memorized by Jews by heart. In other words, Moses gave the Torah scroll and he read it for the people and they heard how he pronounced the words, and then the people remembered it and they taught it to their children, and they passed on from 3300 BCE, from 3300 years ago to 1300 BCE till 6 CE, so we're talking about almost 2,000 years, 1900 years. The Jewish people transmitted as part of the Oral Torah how you vowelize the text and how you pronounce the text. Okay? So what does that mean? It means that when you read the Torah, you cannot even read the Torah without the Oral Torah. You can't read the written Torah without the Oral Torah. Let me give you an example. I'm going to open up to Genesis chapter 1, right from the beginning. And it says like this. It says, Bereshit bara Elohim et hashamayim ve'et haaretz. In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. V'haaretz hayta tohu v'vohu v'choshech al pnei tohom. And the earth was empty and void and darkness upon the face of the deep. And it goes on. And then the next thing says, Vayomer Elohim yihi or, vayihi or. And God said, let there be light, and there was light. And then it says like this. It says, V'yar Elohim et or ki tov. V'yar Elohim et or ki tov. God saw the light that it was good. V'yavdel Elohim ben or uben choshech. And God separated between the light and the darkness. So, let me explain to you something. The word for God saw, which is here, Vayar Elohim et haor ki tov, God saw the light that it is good. The only way that we know how to read the word Vayar, he saw, is because the vowels were preserved as part of the oral tradition of the Jewish people, as part of the Oral Torah. If there are no vowels in there, you could read that word in several different ways. You could read it Vayira, Vayira. And God feared the light. God feared the light because it was good. Maybe it means, and God feared the light because it was good. How do you know that it means, and God saw the light? It could be pronounced either way if you only have the consonants. And the written Torah only has the consonants. The vowel marks are part of the Oral Torah. Or the next verse, Vayi erev, vayi boker yom echad, and there was evening and there was morning, day one. That could be read, if you don't have the vowels, it could be read, Vayihi arev, vayi bakar, yom echad. There was mixed animals and cows on the first day. Okay? You could read every word and every verse in the Torah differently without the vowels. So without the vowels, the written Torah is open to many different kinds of versions and many different kinds of translations. Now I quoted for you a couple of things that might sound absurd to you. Obviously, if you have to choose between it was evening and it was morning, or there were mixed animals and there were cows, you understand which one the Torah means. But it's not always that simple. There are a lot of nuances where depending how you vowelize something, it could be future tense, past tense, present tense. It could be referring to this person or that person, and it's all in the vowels. And when you open your King James Bible and look in the introduction to the Old Testament, it will say, translated from the Masoretic text. What does that mean, translated from the Masoretic text? That means, the Masoretic text means the original Hebrew text of the Bible with the vowels, the way they were recorded in Tiberias in the 6th century by the Jewish grammaticians, okay? And those vowels are part of the Oral Torah. So without the Oral Torah, you don't have a written Torah. Because the written Torah without the Oral Torah is only consonants with no vowels. You have no written Torah without the Oral Torah. That's number one, as far as the Oral Torah is concerned. Every time you read your written Bible, you're reading it according to the tradition that the Jewish people preserved orally of how to vowelize the text. That's number one. Number two, anyone who studies the Bible will understand that it's full of statements that can't possibly be interpreted without the Oral Torah. My favorite example is in Deuteronomy chapter 12, verse 21. Yes, there are spaces also. Deuteronomy chapter 12, verse 21 says as follows. This is just an obvious example, but there are hundreds of examples like this. Chapter 12, verse 21, it says like this. It's referring to eating meat. You know, originally when the Jewish people were brought out of Egypt, the original commandment was that they could only eat meat if it was part of the sacrificial rite in the temple. Certain sacrifices that you brought in the temple, you get to take home a portion of the meat and celebrate with your family and eat it with wine while you drink wine and celebrate and all the good that God has blessed you. But just to go and slaughter an animal and eat the meat wasn't permitted to Jews initially after the giving of the Torah. So in the book of Deuteronomy, in chapter 12, God says that once the Jewish people enter the land of Israel, now it will be permitted for them to slaughter animals and eat the meat just because they want to eat. They don't have to necessarily bring it to the temple or to the tabernacle. They can eat meat whenever they want. And the way that God says it is like this. When the Lord your God will broaden your boundary, as he spoke to you, and you say, I would like to eat meat, For you will have desire to eat meat to your heart's entire desire. To your heart's entire desire may you eat meat. In Hebrew, Ki yarchiv Hashem Elokecha et gvulcha, when God will expand your boundary, kasher diber lach, as He has promised to you. Ve'amarta, you will say to yourself, Ochla vasar, I want to eat meat. Ki tava nafshecha, because my soul desires it. Lechol basar, to eat meat. B'chol avat nafshecha tuchal basar. Whenever you want to eat meat, it's permitted to you. Ki yirchach mimcha hamakom, even though the place, in other words, the temple or the tabernacle, may be far from you. Asher yivchar Adonai Elohecha lasum shmo sham, the place that God will choose to rest His name upon, the temple, it may be far away from you. V'zavachta mikarcha, but you can slaughter your cows, umitzonecha, your sheep, asher natan Hashem Elokecha lecha, which the Lord your God has given to you, ka'asher tziviticha, in the fashion that I have told you, that I have commanded you. In the fashion that I have commanded you. So in chapter 12, verse 21 of Deuteronomy, God says, when you want to slaughter the animals, just make sure that you do it in the fashion that I have commanded you. What fashion is that? If you search through all of the written Torah, there's no place where God commands the fashion of how the slaughter has to take place. So what we see here is that God commanded something to the Jewish people, or to Moses, that is not recorded in the Torah. He commanded the manner of kosher slaughter, which basically means you have to have a knife which is perfectly sharp without any kind of nicks or blemishes, and that you must slaughter the animal at the neck in one clean swipe so that it feels no pain, and you must sever both the I'm not an expert in kosher slaughter, but there's two things that you have to slaughter in order to make sure that you cut off the feeling of the animal immediately and that the blood continues to go out so that the blood is released from the animal. Exactly, to let the meat bleed out. And so here God says, when you do this, when you slaughter animals, you must do it in the manner that I have commanded you. In the manner that I've commanded you. But look through the Bible. God doesn't command anywhere how to slaughter animals. And so this is one example of a place where the Torah actually references the Oral Torah. The written Torah references that there are things that God had commanded to Moses which are not in the written Torah. Another example, obvious example, is where God commands, you shall inscribe them as a sign on your hand, and they shall serve as frontlets between your eyes, which it's a meaningless verse without the Oral Torah. The Oral Torah records a tradition going back to Moses, that this is referring to what we call today tefillin, which are little leather boxes that have scrolls written inside of them, and so on and so forth. So what you need to understand is that when God gave the written Torah to Moses on Mount Sinai, He didn't just, so how do you know how to kill animals? So that's what I'm going to tell you. Every time God, why did it take 40 years for God to reveal the Torah to Moses? If all He was revealing is this 5 books of Moses, He could have revealed it in the course of a week or 2 weeks. Why did He need 40 years? He calls Moses in, teaches him a little bit, and then goes away. The next day, teaches him a little bit more. And the answer is, it wasn't the transcribing of the books. I write every year 2 Torah scrolls. So in 40 years, I could have written 80 Torah scrolls. It wasn't just that God was teaching Moses the writing of the actual words for 40 years. He would teach him a section, he would transcribe it, and then Moses would spend the rest of the day with God hearing the interpretation of it. God would explain to him all the details of exactly what it means. So when God said, you can slaughter meat whenever you want, once you go into the land, then He spent several days with Moses explaining to him all of the laws of kosher slaughter, all of the mystical intentions behind kosher slaughter, and everything that he needs to know so that he could pass this tradition on from generation to generation of exactly how kosher slaughter is done. And we Jews till this day slaughter the animals exactly in the fashion that God explained to Moses. After He had him transcribe the words that I just read to you, God spent time explaining the details of this to Moses. And that's called the Oral Torah. And so too with each and every commandment. When God commands us to keep the Sabbath, it's not just a day of rest. It has exact ramifications, exact details of how you go about keeping the Sabbath, what is permitted, what's prohibited, as well as the spiritual meaning behind it, which is layer upon layer upon layer of spiritual meaning. Also taught which animals cannot be eaten. Well, that's recorded actually in the written Torah. So, no, but birds, yes. The birds, not all of them are listed in the written Torah, and that's a tradition indeed. It's part of the Oral Torah, which birds are permitted to be eaten and which ones are not. Everyone is mesmerized. I don't know if they're mesmerized or if they cut out or what. Certain animals I say we shouldn't eat. Okay. I don't care what I say or what you say. I only care what God says. So God says in the Torah which animals we can eat and which animals we cannot eat. So what you need to understand is the written Torah without the Oral Torah is a meaningless book. It's literally a meaningless book. The written Torah is only useful if you study the Oral Torah and then you use the written Torah as a reference point, as an anchor, to sum up all of the layer upon layer of meaning in the Oral Torah. Now for you Christians, I'm not going to do this very much in this class, but just look in your New Testament. I don't remember the chapter and verse. The last time I opened a New Testament was several years ago. But Jesus actually orders his disciples, and he says, do everything that the Pharisees tell you. Don't do what they do, but do everything that they tell you. Because Jesus criticized the rabbis and the Pharisees as often being hypocrites, and there was some truth to that. There was a lot of hypocrisy going on in his time among the Torah scholars, and the Talmud also records that hypocrisy that was going on and criticizes it equally, if not more. But he says, everything that they teach you, you should do. Because even he understood that the Oral Torah is obligatory, and that without the Oral Torah, without the teachings of the rabbis, there is no written Torah. Okay? So anyone who understands a version of Christianity that basically feels that the Oral Torah is made up by the rabbis or something like that is going against Jesus' own words, just so you know. Were the Dead Sea Scrolls part of the written or Oral Torah? Okay. So now, that's the summary that I wanted to do with you guys before I start the reading of the book. And I think that I'm going to leave the actual reading of the book for the next class, because it's gone on now for quite some time. And it's a long replay for people to catch up on, for the people who maybe missed the live broadcast. But I'm going to take questions now on everything that I taught, which I hope gives you guys a good background for what the Torah is and how we Jewish people perceive the Torah. Okay? Which might be a little bit different than how non-Jewish people perceive the Torah, or even Jewish people who didn't get the proper education. Thank you very much. Bless you. This has been awesome. Thank you. Thank you guys all for listening. We had 40, 50 people through over an hour of content, which is really superb. I used to teach classes in California before I moved to Israel, and I don't think I ever had more than 35 people in the room. So here we have 40, 50 people sitting for over an hour, and I'm sure there'll be more people watching the replay. The next class will be, with God's help, sometime this week. Probably, let's see, it will not be Tuesday night. It may be Wednesday night or Thursday night. Okay? Either Wednesday night or Thursday night my time. And of course, if you're not able to come in the live broadcast, the replay will be archived for 24 hours. So you'll be able to get that. I will consider putting these up on YouTube. We'll see. It's a little bit of extra work, but perhaps. Awesome class. Thank you. I'm going to try to save it. What else did I want to tell you guys? So if you know anybody who likes this kind of class, who you think wants to be here, make sure they get on Periscope if they're not on Periscope. And they should follow me, and then they should tweet me, or else come into one of my other scopes that's public, and just write Torah there, and I'll follow them so that they get the invite. And that's the best way to get as many people as possible into the class. went to a Christian school, they taught about the oral and written Torah. Very good. Not all Christian schools teach that, but I'm glad that they taught you that there. All right, guys. If nobody has any more questions, I'm going to sign out and wish you guys shalom from Israel. Peace and blessing to all of you. Have a good rest of your weekend. And I hope to see you all back soon, sometime this week. Bye.